happened, even those people who perhaps are the most asleep, or at least refusing to take notice of what's been said, must have been aware that a large part of social media platforms came down for a number of hours, as predicted yesterday. And those of you who did see the podcast, I did give those dates between beginning and an ending, 4th and the 8th, where we would expect activity to occur. And so I'm very pleased that, things in the public eye are actually happening. Mainstream media will brush over it. They'll probably say that it was some sort of worldwide glitch, but they won't want to discuss it because it's not their agenda. It's not their story. I know that very many of you are disappointed that when you switched on this morning, or whenever you switch on, the social media platforms are back up and running. And many of you would have liked to have seen them permanently off, and then other wider things happening. Some commentators are saying that it was a test. That's not actually strictly accurate. The people behind this social media shutdown didn't need to test it. They knew exactly what would happen when they press this button, or they do this, or they do that. What they did have in Texas and in other places were teams of people monitoring the effect of what they'd done. So it wasn't a test to see if it worked. It was a test, in that sense of the word, to see the effect in different countries across the earth. It was much more a warning shot. What are they warning? Well, they're warning about the censorship that all of these social media platforms have. I myself are removed from YouTube, as indeed are every truth speaker or patriot or a warrior, whatever you want to call us all. We're all out of YouTube because the narrative that we have, the truth, these organizations don't want. So it's a test now to see if they start to scale back their censorship. Whether they will or not is anybody's guess. There are some commentators who got very excited, and it was quite hard to follow their narrative. Some people got very angry and saying things like, I told you so, I told you this would happen, you should believe me. That's not actually really helpful. That's not the path that I follow, or we in the Connecting Consciousness follow. What we think we need to do is to get the information out there. And if we're right, we're right. And if we don't get it right, we should be honest and say, well, we didn't get that one right. But in this instance, I'm really pleased because I knew broadly what was going to happen. And that's why I did the podcast, the day before, as it were. I got that out while I knew I'd still be able to, and was able to give dates. Others too also had that information, and they got that out in their own way, through their own sites. And that's important because we need to keep the believers, the truth seekers, up to date with information as best as we can. And those people who, they're not interested, well, it's not going to do them any good anyway. So let's not bother about that. A test is a test of reaction. All of these social media companies are money orientated. And so when they are taken down, they lose money from advertisers like YouTube. They lose connectivity with other platforms. They share money that way. They lose their subscribers, and this damages the product. So the point is, these people who run these social media platforms will be very, very concerned that they were so easily taken down, and that they were not in a position to put it back, and it only came back when those who were monitoring and are in control gave it back to them. And so they will most likely want to play ball. But the reality is, of course, that those people don't run the cabal. They take orders from the cabal. And it's my guess that the cabal will continue to insist that they don't play game. They don't play ball with the good side. And the next few hours will dictate their response. And I said on my bulletin board, my blog, if you like. It's just my website, simonparks.org, but it's where I put my updates when I can't really be doing a video. I just want to give you short updates. And as I said, the ball is in their court. The next few hours will dictate what the White Hats do next. If there's no change, then this is going to happen and be happening on a much more permanent level. It is true that in Facebook, which is the #1 target for the White Hats, staff who were trying to enter the server room, the main room, and new staff trying to come into the main building found that their identity cards were not being recognized by the computer controlling the security for those doors. And I'm also told that in one of the buildings that the military entered, a little bit like they did all those months ago in Germany, when they got in and arrested the head of the CIA, the Gina woman. And I understand they've been into one of the buildings. For what purpose, I don't know. And so this is ongoing. Remember, we don't like 10 days of darkness. We like a number of days without communication. And goodness me, I've been using that for a few months. And that's exactly what we had in many countries. A few hours in that case of no communication. But please don't think it's over. It's just the start. Sort of a strange analogy. And apparently you like my strange analogies. I was talking about these crazy people that would do anything and drink neat fluoride, and about 20 of you wrote in and thought that was very funny. So I give an analogy, which I'm sorry if you're American and you don't know what a cricket game is. It's okay, you're not missing much. But basically what happened yesterday, my time, was that it was like the cup of tea that all the cricket players have before they go out and bat. It's the opening shot. And that's exactly what it was. It was to show the bad guys the depth, breadth, and capability that the United States military and its associates in other countries have. And I can assure everyone that at the highest level in the cabal, they are now formulating their response. Basically, people like me are kept off YouTube, then there's been no change, has there? So many good patriots in America and across the world who are excluded from YouTube and can't bring what they would call a conservative voice, patriotic voice. Perhaps in Britain we might just say a truth seeker's voice, people seeking the truth and just trying to share that. If that type of censorship doesn't change, then I can't see the White Hats pulling back. Okay, so what's next? And I'm sorry there weren't tanks on the streets. Many of you have written in and spoken to your coordinators, and you were disappointed at that. But there have been more serious questions, such as why do the good guys play these games? Why are playing by the rules? Why are they continually giving the other side these opportunities? And the reason is that if a good guy doesn't play by the rules, then you're a bad guy. And although it is deeply, deeply frustrating that the other side are given time and chance, there are a group of people, let's just say they're in Five Wall, which at the moment is in a bit of turmoil in some departments, who would say, well, look, we don't want to get involved. We don't want to do this. This isn't right. But the more this goes on, the smaller that voice gets, and the more is the general consensus that actually we have to do it. Now, I know the general consensus in there. Military people would say, well, Simon, this has already been agreed and done, and I know that it was agreed a long time ago, but there are still dissenting voices. And what I'm saying is that the more that the bad guys show their hand, then those people who consider themselves more amenable or more balanced in their perspective are having to say, you're right, they're not listening. We're going to have to take it to the next notch. So there's a lot of chatter out there about what is the next notch, what could possibly happen. Certainly, if the media become truthful and truly report everything from the vaccines right through to child trafficking, right through to the Space Force, all of these things, if they were to truly report it, that's a long way towards mending bridges. Or I'm talking about bridges. The Iron Bridge in Rome that was hit I believe it was hit by the same weapon that the good guys used in Nashville last Christmas. And please, just because there's an explosion or something like that, your natural reaction is to think it's the bad guys, because good guys don't do that. Yes, they do. They have to. And there was a statement some time ago that the good guys said that they were going to turn the enemy's weapons on themselves, whether warfare and it's directed energy weapons or high energy beam weapons. The difference is that when the good guys do it, there isn't a loss of life. Or in Nashville, there was one loss of life, but that person was already taken out and placed in that position. The Iron Bridge over the Tiber, it is laughable what the mainstream are saying, which is hobos, tramps had a cooking fire under the bridge, and this cooking fire suddenly set fire to steel bridge. It's exactly the same as 9/11, because the intense heat from the fuel of the airplane melted all these millions of tons of steel and brought the building down. I thought media had got a bit more savvy. I thought they'd realized that the human race over the last years has got more with it. And to say that Hobo's cooking fire has partially destroyed an iron bridge is insane. But then maybe they are insane. So the Iron Bridge, made in 1862 in Britain, yes, when Britain actually could do things, when we had engineers that led the world in iron forging, iron manufacture. And in 1863, this iron bridge was disassembled, sent out to Italy, and reassembled by a Belgian, I believe. I think it was a Belgian engineer, reassembled. Why was it hit by an energy beam weapon? It was hit on the same day, right back to the time that Julius Caesar overthrew the Senate in Rome. Julius Caesar was a general, and he decided that the Senate, that was the elected body ruling Rome and the Roman Empire, was corrupt, and he decided that the military could do a much better job. Are you getting the story now? He decided that the military could do a much better job, and he declared that he would be the equivalent of what we call an emperor. And so from that day onwards, right through to the end of the Roman Empire was ruled by emperors, although they kept the Senate, but the Senate was more of a glorified rubber stamp. It decided where a fountain would go or an aqueduct would go. But it was the emperor who would have the generals report to him, and there's one female emperor, I believe, where they would report, etc., etc. And so here was an interesting alert to Rome, Vatican, that this bridge was struck on the same day as that. So how did the bad guys react? Well, I believe that a bomb has been successfully defused, spanning a bridge between the United States of America and Canada. Very little information coming through on that, but that's how they responded. So they've done a bridge for a bridge. However, this is, I believe, has been diffused. So when people say, well, the war is over, no, it's not over. It's still going. And how many times have I had to keep pulling people up and say, we're still fighting this war? And there's the evidence of it. What about all these vacant buildings? People ask me. The White House is vacant. It's nicely illuminated, a nice red color at the moment. What about Buckingham Palace in Great Britain? What about some of these other buildings that appear to be empty or vacant, which have a very bad history in terms of what might have happened there in the past? Well, it's possible that they could be removed. Some people were saying to me they'd like to knock Buckingham Palace down and build a flower garden. They might knock the White House down and make a children's play park or something. Don't know about that. But maybe those lots might become available. We have a situation, obviously, which I know most of you are aware of now, in Taiwan. The finance minister of Taiwan made an announcement that he believed that Taiwan was about to be invaded by China. He reached out to Australia. There's a geographical closeness there. And he asked Australia if they would militarily support Taiwan if they were invaded by the Chinese. There is no record of that reply. Remember, the United States of America has an ongoing support pact with Taiwan, just as Great Britain did with Poland just before the war started. There are American troops in Taiwan, there's United States Air Force bases, there are Marine bases. And so any attack on Taiwan would be an attack on America. We have a situation where the Russian troops are now massing on the Ukraine border. Remember, it was a CIA operation that initially took Ukraine away from Russia. President Putin has been very keen to take Ukraine back. So there are large numbers of troops massing there. We've got a situation with Azerbaijan, Armenia, Turkey, Iran, and Israel. There are three, what I would call three major hotspots. Although it may look pretty difficult, I don't believe that a war will come of this. And certainly I'm not concerned of a nuclear war at all. Please don't be concerned or worried. I believe these things have to take place to rebalance the books, shall we say. But certainly with some of these key buildings, I wouldn't want to walk too close to them, sort of 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning, just in case the next morning they were a parking lot. In terms of the emergency broadcast system, well, I suppose if television is affected or your phones are affected, then the only way to get messages to people is via the emergency broadcast system. Now, whether an American voice is heard over your phone in Britain or France or Germany, I doubt very much. But I would imagine that each country would have its own system to alert its citizens. However, instead of saying there's an earthquake or there's a flood, this might be more of an information about how to stay connected, how to listen, and why things are occurring. Lots of people saying that President Trump will be, excuse me, up in Air Force One when the 7 trumpets, the 7 presidential broadcasts are done. No, that's not true. They've all been recorded already, and I guess he'll be in Texas. That's where I would be if I was in an underground control base that monitored the world. So I don't believe he needs to be in Air Force One. He has access to it, but I believe these are pre-records, although he is capable and clever enough to actually wing it, as we say in Great Britain. In other words, if he wanted to go live, he's absolutely capable of doing that. But I would imagine that it's his time. He doesn't want to be doing broadcasts if he needs to be, taking information from other people. So I guess these will be pre-records, although some may well be live. That I think is necessary. Remember that President Trump is, please, boss, don't be cross with me, is not the be all and end all. Oh, look, I've got an advert come up, go away. Typical. He's not the be all and end all. He is a person that played the most remarkable role that nobody else could have done. And he got everything to where it needs to be now. But it's more than just one man. It's about every man and woman and child on the planet. It's about all the organizations on the planet. And it's about how we as a human race see our future. Are we prepared to make the sacrifice? And don't worry, it doesn't mean dying. It's a sacrifice of our values. It's a sacrifice of being strong enough to say, look, the last 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 years that, I've been alive on this planet, I realize that it's all a lie. I realize what this very small select group of people have been doing to us. And are we prepared to make the sacrifice to say, I can change and I don't want that, and I will push back? And there's no problem with demonstrating at all. However, at the moment, with things happening, it's probably better that everyone stays at home. So for years, I've said to you, have 2 weeks of food, maybe 3 weeks. If you've got pets, have that. Keep the water. Maybe fill your bathtub up at night, because if the pumps go off and you can't flush your toilet, you've got water to do it. Why would that happen? Well, at the moment, all our power on this planet is being generated terrestrially from very understandable power sources. I am hoping that we can very quickly move to a Tesla type energy production. And the advantage of that is, first of all, demonic entities cannot reside in that type of delivery and frequency. And just as importantly, it's virtually free to produce. Therefore, there's no reason why people would pay a huge premium to keep warm in winter. That will require current domestically to be turned off while we transfer over, so there should be some disruption. In terms of your lighting, of course, I've been told that landlines 911, 999, or whatever your emergency number is in the world will still operate because people need to go to hospital. And the good guys are called good guys because they don't want that to impact on people who are not involved. They are bystanders, they're observers in what is occurring. Emergency services, the police, the paramedics, the fire, all will keep their radios. That will not be turned off. In actual fact, it'll be enhanced because there'll be less traffic to interrupt with it on the waves. So that's been planned. Everything is a meticulous planning. I mean, it really is an incredible meticulous planning. And it had to be ever since 9/11 and ever since the murder of John F. Kennedy. The good guys realized that an ordinary game of chess wasn't going to work. You needed a supercomputer to outthink and outperform, and on a minute by minute real time understanding, observe what's occurring and how resources or actions had to be altered or changed to meet not just what was occurring now, but what was about to occur in the next 5 minutes, half an hour, day, etc. And so that's really how it's working, a very, very connected system throughout the planet working together. And let's face it, if it's not in the public eye, most people won't believe it. But we have seen something. Everyone with eyes to see has seen vast swathes of social media taken down, and there's no good reason for it, such as a whirlwind or an earthquake, or the lady next door stuck her fingers in the socket and the whole block went out without electricity. There's nothing like that. This is a absolutely well meticulously planned operation to send one heck of a message to those who need to understand that message. Now, for lots of young kids, 25 and under, it was just a nuisance. They couldn't get on Instagram, they couldn't do TikTok, they couldn't do WhatsApp, and they're probably not even bothered. They're not interested. All they're interested in is that they couldn't talk to their friends and they couldn't post their latest favorite pictures and all the rest of it. Well, I'm sorry, but you are in for a heck of a shock, because there are large numbers of people, not just in that age range, in a much older age range, older than me. Charlie Ward keeps saying I'm older than him. It's not true. You're older than me, Charlie. Who still in denial. The Pandora Papers. They're actually more interested in the Pandora Papers than they are about the EBS. Because that's a level of corruption that they understand. Because government ministers are always prone to being corrupt. So a lot of the people who just not interested and don't believe in what we're talking about are interested and do believe in the Pandora Papers, because that's what they were brought up on, that governments were corrupt at that level. What they were not brought up on was paedophilia, child trafficking, wars, turning governments upside down, creating insurrection, and of course, let's not talk about the vaccine situation, because that's just a completely new topic for those people. And so we are, I think, now in a bit of a trough, waiting to see what the next response will be. What it does mean, hello Merlin, you want to say hello Merlin? Merlin has been introduced before, but he's getting bigger and bigger by the day. Here he is, he's 6 months old, and he does want to be a star, and so he just nuzzled forward so that he could be involved. And for those of you who say, but Simon, you're a cat person. Yes, of course I'm a cat person, but I'm also now a dog person. So there we are. This is Merlin. You've got to have some fun. You've got to have some. We can't all be biting our nails and shouting and screaming at the audience and waving our hands about. That's not actually how we should do business. But the reality, I think, is for everybody that the next few days are pivotal, because depending on the responses from those that the message was sent to, will dictate and direct the type of responses. Those of you who are fairly clear with Intel are saying, yes, but it's already written in stone. Certainly, what has been shared with you guys is what's been written in stone. But there are other elements that have not been shared for general intel because the things that have been shared have to happen. They have to be done. There's no question of that. They have to be done. But what isn't shared with people is what should happen if the bad guys make an offensive response. What will happen if they do this or they do that? And there's no point in them sharing it because they don't want the other side to know. So what I'm saying is that what is known and out there on the internet is what the good guys wanted people to know, because I want people like me to alert everyone else and share that information. But at the same time, they don't want people being tipped off. I've only signed one non-circumventing, non-disclosure agreement. Charlie Ward has signed two. Okay, so it's more difficult for Charlie, but Charlie exactly knows what's happening. And Charlie and I play a very, very close role. So there are things that I can talk about that he can't, and things that he can talk about that I don't know. So between the two of us, we try to, bring that information out in a calmer way than many of the commentators that unfortunately are coming forward now, that are basically screaming at us and shouting at us and getting really excited. And that is not, in my opinion, maybe it is what people want, but I don't think it is. I think we want to have the facts in an order, in an easily understandable way, in a way that we know that we can do something about it. So there's no point in panicking. There's not much you can do. The die is set in that sense of the word. But what we can do is to make sure that we don't get worried by the stories coming out of mainstream, even some of the stories coming out from the good guys, which are designed to move the earth along in a certain direction. Please understand that this is a very big game of chess, is the best way I can put it, really. And although I do agree with people that the war is won, in the sense that in 2018, the head of the ruling families were, dispossessed of their power. Can I say that? And as I've said before, there are still middle managers who are trying to step into that vacuum, and they are causing a problem. So although for the first time in many thousands of years, this Luciferian evil group are without direction, they're still incredibly dangerous. And that is why we're treading lightly. In terms of the RV, well, that'll happen when it'll happen. It'll happen when it's the right time to happen. And that is a absolute key major part of the salvation of humanity, who have been robbed blind, as we say in Britain, absolutely robbed blind. All of us, every one of us who is not an elite, has had to fight and struggle to just get by on this planet. We've been made to believe that that's the life, and we're very lucky to have that life, and that's all there is. And every time somebody writes in and says there's a street light not working, or hey, there's a big hole in the road, and they go, well, we don't have the money to repair that. This is all part of the lie. They absolutely do have the money to repair it. They've absolutely been stealing money off us, left, right, and centre. It is beyond words how much money they've taken off people for hundreds of years and misused it and not actually accounted for it. Because if that money that we'd all given or been taken from us, to be paid, had been used for the purpose it was supposed to be used for, the world we would live in would be a much happier place. And so that's why this change has to come about. It has to come about because ordinary human beings deserve to live a life of happiness. Well, we're not brought here, we're not designed to be miserable, depressed, anxious, unhappy, because the next bill is due. We can't afford the rent. We can't buy the food. We don't know how we can afford the heating. We aren't designed for that. We're designed to work, but not to be a slave. We're designed to learn, educate ourselves, but not lies. We're designed to have freedom and to exercise, but not in front of television cameras that just want to make huge amounts of money off people. And so this is a freedom. It's not just a freedom of free speech, which many Americans understand that freedom has been under a threat, and it has. But this is a much greater freedom. It's a freedom under God. Can I put it to you like that? I mean, can you ever imagine in any science fiction books the story of the local governor? Hello, darling. The local governor saying that you can't go to church. I mean, there are people in Great Britain who go to church and they want to sing, and they're told you can't sing unless you've got a mask on. You know, but the trouble is, so many people believe this. They do what they're told, and that has got to change. And so that's what this is about: actions that are discernible, in your face, and only the